from this time forth, forever and unto the ages.
Εις το όνομα του Πατρός και του Υιού και του Αγίου Πνεύματος. Αμήν. Please be seated. Kalimera σας. Good morning. The faithful remnant of Israel. We are still basking in the beautiful glow of the Christmas spirit, with Christmas trees, stockings hung, presents, gifts, merriness all around us. Not even basically 24 hours after celebrating one of the most joyous and bright holidays of the year, the birth of a new star, the entry of an eternal light into the world. And yet, so quickly, the message of the gospel shows us a stark reality of a time right after Jesus' birth, that the world was plunged into darkness, that an entire region, the children were murdered, that a king so corrupt, so hungry and greedy for power, decides to murder innocent children. An act that gives me shivers every time I read it, every time I meditate on what those women must have went through, those mothers, those parents, the villages, the cities, the entire communities of people destroyed. Imagine a city's children being murdered. It's unspeakable. It's horrible. And yet, the fathers and mothers of the Holy Church thought it important and poignant to place it right after we celebrate the Lord's birth. Instead of reading stories of how peaceful and how loving and how now that Jesus was born, everything is going to be perfect. Instead of that message, we hear something so different. The entire gospel talking about loss, tragedy, sadness, death, murder, of the Holy Family fleeing in the darkness of night, Joseph, Mary, and the baby Jesus having to run like refugees in the middle of the night, fleeing a terrible king. And so we can only imagine what the Holy Family must have been through after this glorious birth, and the wise men and the angels and the shepherds. Almost that very night, they were running for their lives. They were running in terror and anxiety, worry, going hundreds of miles away on foot, with no means, with nothing except perhaps the gifts the wise men had given them, going into not a new city, a whole new country, where there was a different language, a different people. And so this is where the church doesn't really know what happened in the life of Christ. Those years in Egypt are very mysterious. Those years that Jesus grew, the family stayed together. But in Egypt, they stayed there for years. And so after they fled to safety, and after who knows what happened in the life of Christ, The only thing we know is that they came back. They faced those challenges. They took courage and they returned to a place where they knew it was not safe. And it was at that time that the greatest mission on the world took place. The greatest work any human being has ever done, those 3 years of ministry that Christ offered, took place only after facing death, after facing those who would murder his family. You see, the reality is, as bright and as brilliant and beautiful as light can be, darkness is also terrible. And the church does not teach that if you believe in God, if you cling to him and hope in him with all of your might and all your strength and power, that he will keep darkness away from you. That he will somehow only allow you to be in a state of joy and happiness. And that all troubles, all challenges, all problems are somehow going to be, diverted, eluded, escaped. And we would be deluding ourselves as Christians if we taught that. That gospel doesn't work. Because bad things happen to good people. And good things happen to evil people. And this paradox, this problem, we have been facing and dealing from the beginning, my brothers and sisters. From the very start that we gained consciousness and reflected on our lives and reflected on why and how we live our lives. And so our job, our sacred duty, is how do we prepare ourselves for when those challenges come? How do we build a life, build a child, raise a family that can withstand, that can deal with life's challenges, with life's losses and tragedies? Because if, in the gospel, if the Holy Family had just run away and never looked back out of fear, we wouldn't have the story, the life of Christ. That would have been the end. He would have flown and run into Egypt, and that's it. Instead, Jesus takes courage. Jesus comes back unafraid, with courage, with strength, with faith in God, that God is going to protect and multiply that message that he was bringing him. And so this teaches us, my brothers and sisters, this very stark reality of listening to a story of children being murdered and families being chased out in the night shows us that we must face life's challenges. We must accept and not crumble and not fall when life deals us a heavy blow. How can we find the strength, find the courage, and find our faith to never curse God and never say, "Why me, Lord? Why me?" Instead, we say, "Lord, thy will be done." Amen.